Black women represent 1/3 of all women serving life sentences in the United States, despite comprising only 13% of the general female population, with 1 in every 39 black women in prison serving life without parole, compared to 1 in every 59 white women. We examined 8 cases from 2007 to 2026 involving black women who received life sentences for crimes ranging from the calculated murder of employers and elaborate framing schemes to staged ambushes and public retail executions. Case 1. Natavia Lowery, New York, 2007/2010. Linda Stein was a cultural icon before she became a homicide victim. Born in 1945 in the Bronx and raised in Riverdale, Stein had transcended her middle-class origins through marriage to Seymour Stein, the music industry prodigy who founded Sire Records and launched the careers of Madonna, the Ramones, and the Talking Heads. After their amicable divorce, Linda Stein parlayed her rock and roll connections into a high-flying real estate career, becoming known as the broker to the stars, with clients including Sting, Billy Joel, Steven Spielberg, and Angelina Jolie. By 2007, Stein was 62 years old and battling a brain tumor while maintaining her aggressive business pace. She was known for her brassy, irrepressible personality, a force of nature, according to friends, and a vocabulary that could be like a sailor when she was angry. Her recent romantic life had been disappointing. A flirtation with a younger colleague had ended with her having him fired, a pattern that friends noted was characteristic of her approach to conflict. In July 2007, Stein's real estate firm, Douglas Elliman, sent her a new personal assistant to replace one she had fired in June. Natavia Lowery was a 26-year-old African-American woman who had grown up in a Harlem housing project and now lived with her parents in a middle-class Brooklyn high-rise. She had recently graduated from college with a business degree and had founded a high school student mentoring program at her church. On paper, she appeared to be an ideal candidate for the position. The relationship between Stein and Lowery quickly developed complexities that went beyond typical employer-employee dynamics. Lowery's duties were unusually personal and intrusive. She helped Stein with daily tasks, including doing her hair, buttoning her clothes, and even loading her marijuana pipe. Stein, physically diminished by her illness and medications, may have resented her dependency on the younger woman. The power dynamics were fraught. Stein was known to be demanding and profane, while Lowery was an ambitious outsider looking to break into a world of wealth and privilege. Unknown to Stein, Lowery had a history of financial misconduct. She had been fired from a previous job at a Virginia church for embezzling $3,000, though the church had not pressed charges. She had also been arrested for stealing a roommate's identity, though that case was ultimately dropped when a roommate declined to prosecute. When police later searched Lowery's apartment after Stein's death, they found receipts for thousands of dollars in purchases made on the corporate credit card of another former employer, returned for cash. Prosecutors would later establish that Lowery had stolen more than $30,000 from Stein through forged checks and unauthorized use of her bank account information. The thefts were systematic. Lowery was using the money to pay student loans and other personal bills, transforming her employer's financial resources into her own economic lifeline. The night before the murder, Stein had dinner with her friend Mark Bennick and asked him, "What would you think if someone was stealing from me?" Bennick suggested she confront the potential thief. This conversation would prove crucial to understanding the motive for what followed. On October 30th, 2007, Lowery arrived at Stein's Fifth Avenue penthouse apartment to perform her usual duties. According to her later confession, Stein confronted her about the thefts. The confrontation escalated. Stein was yelling, screaming, and cursing at Lowery, allegedly blowing marijuana smoke in her face and making racial slurs. Lowery claimed she snapped, picking up a wooden yoga stick used for stretching exercises and striking Stein repeatedly.
And cursing, and I'm looking like asking myself, who the heck, what the heck is going on? I'm like, why am I here? What's going on? How did I get to this point? I'm asking myself that, and I'm looking at her okay, what's wrong with her? because she just looks crazy right now. Her hand is, going like that, and then she had like her, it's like a wooden baton type thing,
Is it made of wood or some other material?
It's wood.
Okay. And what is it used for?
Yoga. She goes for a walk.
Okay, and can you describe it to me?
It's like, I don't know if you ever see people do yoga. They put it on their shoulders, they stretch, they turn. It looks like a cane.
And how long is it about?
Probably like the length of a cane, but without that hook. So she's pointing the cane at me now, right? So I move the cane. You know how you just like slap it?
Where were you? Still on the couch?
So I'm still on the couch. So she's like waving the cane and stuff at me. Then it's like, I don't know, like after that remark and stuff, and her screaming and yelling, I just snatched it from her. So I took it and it's like I just hit her with it.
Where about her body?
Like right here, but it's long, so it like reached.
So you hit her the first time in the back of her head, and then what happened?
And I did it like a couple more times.
On her head? After the first time she fell, and then you continued to hit her on the head with the stick?
Yes.
Do you know how many times you hit her?
That wasn't myself. I can't count. It was just like I was mad, I was confused, I was angry, paranoid. It was like a feeling like I never had before. It was like, it felt like she was like my worst enemy, So it's like, how do you go from somebody, like a best friend, to an enemy, Like, I used to talk with her and just be like, because she used to always curse people out and stuff. Like, she didn't care. She would, always say like little racial things, and I'll just be like Linda, you can't do that, And
did you feel insulted when she would say these racial things, even if they weren't about you?
Right, and then I'll say sorry to the person, and I'll just be like, I'm so sorry. And, she's just having one of those moments. I start praying.
Did you start feeling badly about what you had done? What else were you feeling?
I felt bad. I felt sorry. Really sorry.
And so what happens at 5:30?
I leave.
And where'd you go?
Home.
And where's that?
Brooklyn.
And who do you live with?
My mom and my stepdad.
Okay, and where is that exactly?
Williamsburg.
Did you check your clothes to make sure you didn't have any blood on you?
Nothing.
What did you do with the pants that you were wearing?
I still have them. I still,
Have you washed the pants or the top?
The top, no. I think I took the pants and I think my mom.
The autopsy revealed Stein had suffered approximately 10 blows to the head, a broken spine, and a fractured neck. She had also sustained lacerations to her face and ear. The murder weapon was never found at the scene, Lowry had removed it, along with her own bloody clothes, before leaving the apartment. Lowry's initial attempts to cover her tracks were calculated. She answered a phone call from Stine's daughter Mandy around 1 p.m., telling her that Stine was out running. She told another friend, Mark Bennick, who called around the same time to confirm birthday drinks, that Stine was taking a walk in the park. At 5 p.m., she returned to the apartment, found the door locked, and went home. She had also used Stine's ATM card to withdraw $800 shortly after the murder. Mandy Stine discovered her mother's body at approximately 10:30 p.m. when she returned to the apartment. The New York Police Department faced immediate pressure. The case involved a high-profile victim in one of Manhattan's most affluent neighborhoods, and media outlets were already on the scene when detectives arrived. The apartment showed no signs of forced entry, immediately suggesting that the killer was someone Stine knew and had admitted voluntarily. Detectives Kevin Walla, Pete Panuccio, Angelique Lofredo, and Tony Rivera led the investigation. They quickly identified Lowry as the last person known to have seen Stine alive. Lowry initially claimed she had walked back and forth between Stine's real estate office and the apartment several times that day, finding Stine not home on her final visit. The break in the case came from surveillance video. Detective Lofredo spent hours reviewing footage from the building's security cameras, looking for what she called a tell. She found it, a moment when Lowry entered the building with money in her hand, a small detail that indicated she had just exited a taxicab rather than walked as she claimed. Further review showed Lowry was the only person to visit Stine's home on the day of the murder, and the video captured her arriving by taxi, contradicting her statements to police. Confronted with this evidence, Lowry's story changed repeatedly. First, she claimed she had forgotten to mention the taxi ride, saying she needed to de-stress after Stine had gotten on her nerves. Then she confessed to a prior incident in college where she had allegedly blacked out and choked a roommate. Next, she claimed a masked stranger had forced her to leave Stine's door unlocked and then beaten Stine to death. Finally, after more than 12 hours of interrogation, she provided a videotaped confession describing how she had beaten Stine with a yoga stick after being provoked. Lowry was arrested on November 9, 2007, and indicted by a grand jury for second-degree murder. Her trial began in January 2010, with jury selection commencing amid significant media attention. The prosecution, led by Manhattan Assistant District Attorney Joan Iluzorban, presented evidence of the theft, the confession, and the physical evidence from the crime scene. The defense, led by attorney John Christie, argued that Lowry's confession had been coerced through a lawless and illegal investigation. They noted that Lowry had been questioned for over 12 hours without a lawyer, despite her family having hired one. They also sought to introduce testimony about the psychology of false confessions, though the judge had not yet ruled on its admissibility. The jury deliberated for approximately 5 hours before convicting Lowry of second-degree murder and multiple counts of theft on February 23, 2010. On May 3, 2010, Manhattan Supreme Court Justice Richard Carruthers sentenced Lowry to 25 years to life for the murder, plus additional time for larceny, forgery, and identity theft convictions. Justice Carruthers described Lowry as having acted with uncommon and almost inhuman calculation, noting that she had calmly lied to Stine's ex-husband and friends at a time when her bloody corpse lay at her feet. He quoted an old and wise adage, "The truth will come to light. Murder cannot be hid long." Lowry read from a 3-page statement maintaining her innocence. "The fight has just begun. My innocence will continuously remain as it did since October 30th, 2007. This case was turned into a media circus. It was never about evidence." Stine's daughters, Mandy and Samantha Steinwells, provided emotional victim impact statements. "I toss and turn, unable to sleep because of the vivid imagery of my dead mother," Mandy said. Samantha directly addressed Lowry. "Where is your apology? You can't even look me in the eye." The total sentence of 32 years to life ensured that Lowry would serve a minimum of 32 years before parole eligibility. Case 2. Lorene Eleanor Austin, California, 2015. The victim and the Craigslist connection. Linnell Barsock was a 29-year-old licensed vocational nurse living in Palmdale, California, a high-desert community in northern Los Angeles County. She resided in a sprawling 3,400-square-foot home that reflected her professional success and upward mobility. Known for her generosity and kind nature, Barsock had helped numerous people integrate into American society, including fellow immigrants she had assisted through nursing school. Her life was busy with professional obligations and romantic complications that would ultimately prove fatal. Lorene Eleanor Austin entered Barsock's life through a Craigslist personal advertisement in the Women Seeking Women section. Austin, then 28 years old, had placed the ad seeking female companionship, and Barsock responded. The two women developed what Austin would later claim was a decade-long friendship, but what was in reality a brief romantic relationship lasting only a matter of weeks. Austin was struggling financially, unable to hold steady employment, and carrying significant debt. She saw in Barsock her beautiful home, thriving career, and stable life, a potential escape from her own circumstances. The relationship progressed rapidly. Austin became obsessed with Barsock, allegedly going so far as to impersonate her when going on dates with other women, effectively taking over our victim's persona, according to investigators. However, the romantic connection was short-lived. After approximately 3 weeks, Barsock texted Austin to indicate that she did not want anything sexual anymore because she planned to focus on her relationship with her boyfriend, Louis Bonheur. Barsock expressed hope that they could remain friends, but Austin's reaction was not that of friend. On June 16, 2010, Austin arrived at Barsock's home under the pretense of finishing a hair-weaving appointment. The two women had planned a beauty day, and Bonheur had left the residence to meet Austin's boyfriend for auto repairs, providing Austin with opportunity. What followed was a calculated execution disguised as an intimate service. Austin shot Barsock in the back of the head while pretending to do her hair, using a pillow as a makeshift silencer to muffle the gunshot. The shooting was intimate and betrayal personal, occurring at close range while Barsock was vulnerable and trusting. After the killing, Austin dragged Barsock's body from the interior of the home into the garage, where she had initially planned to stuff it into Barsock's car and transport it to the desert for disposal. The plan faltered when Austin could not lift the body into the vehicle. Fearing that Bonheur might return home, she pivoted to an alternative scheme, framing the boyfriend for the murder. She placed a black plastic bag over Barsock's head, a detail that investigators later noted suggested the killer knew the victim personally and did not want to see her face. She staged the scene to suggest Bonheur's involvement, then fled to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department in Palmdale to report the discovery. Austin arrived at the station covered in blood, claiming she had slipped in her friend's blood in the garage, and fled after seeing Bonheur at the top of the stairs. She claimed he had chased her as she drove away, forcing her to seek police protection. The framing attempt included specific evidentiary elements. Austin presented police with a forged Dear John letter purportedly written by Barsock to Bonheur, stating, "Dear Louis, I'm leaving you for another guy that I've been dating. Don't try to find me. I've been sleeping with him for 4 months now." The letter was designed to establish motive for Bonheur, suggesting jealousy and rejection as drivers for violence. Austin also claimed to have seen Bonheur at the house, creating direct eyewitness testimony against him. Based on Austin's testimony and the forged letter, authorities arrested Louis Bonheur for murder. Bonheur, who had a documented history of jealousy and controlling behavior, including allegedly running Barsock off the road months earlier, appeared to be a credible suspect. He had scratches on his face when interrogated and initially seemed distraught but suspicious. However, Bonheur provided a detailed alibi. Detectives verified this account through surveillance footage from Kragen Auto Parts and AutoZone stores, which clearly show Bonheur 65 miles away from Palmdale. Cell phone records corroborated his location. The lights start to go on that we're heading in the wrong direction, as Detective Bob Kinney later described the realization. With Bonheur cleared, investigators re-examined Austin's account. They discovered multiple inconsistencies. Austin claimed to have known Barsock for 10 years, yet Barsock's mother did not recognize her when they passed at the sheriff's station. Austin claimed to have spent hours in a park watching children play in sweltering June heat, an alibi that made no sense. Most damningly, authorities found 2 bullets in her purse on the night she reported the murder.
The sergeant that interviewed you earlier, as part of officer safety, because you have blood on you and you just came from a murder scene, he's got to make sure you don't have a gun in there that could shoot him. So he looked at your purse and he saw this.
Let me backtrack.
Yeah, think about it.
That came from where did it come?
Told you that there were 2 bullets in your purse.
2?
2.
I don't know how there's 2.
And subsequent investigation revealed she owned the same type of gun used to kill Barsock. Forensic evidence sealed the case against her. Criminalist Mary Keynes discovered Austin's DNA on bloody latex gloves found at the scene and on a bloody fingerprint on a plastic container used to clean up blood. A bloody footprint on a rug matched Austin, and hair-weaving needles were found rolled up in the area rug near the body, confirming her presence during the supposed beauty appointment. Luminol testing revealed that Barsock had been killed inside the home and dragged to the garage, contradicting Austin's claim of finding her there. By the time investigators had pieced together the evidence against Austin, she had fled. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department issued a warrant for her arrest on murder charges, but Austin had already left California and the United States entirely. She traveled to Belize, settling in Punta Gorda in the Toledo district, where she lived under the radar for over a year. The case might have remained cold if not for television exposure. In 2011, the murder and Austin's disappearance were featured on America's Most Wanted, the long-running fugitive tracking program. The episode aired internationally, including in Belize, and generated a crucial tip from local residents in Punta Gorda who recognized Austin from the broadcast. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Detective Bob Kinney described the process. Once we vetted the tips and confirmed she was out of the country, we got in touch with the FBI. Over the following 2 months or so, the FBI partnered with Belizean authorities to bring Austin down. The FBI's Fugitive Task Force coordinated with Belizean law enforcement to locate and apprehend Austin. On January 25, 2012, Austin was arrested in Punta Gorda, Belize, without incident. She was taken into custody by Belizean authorities working with FBI agents, then expelled from Belize and flown to Houston, Texas, under FBI escort on January 26, 2012. Upon arrival in Houston, she was handed over to homicide investigators and formally arrested for Barsock's murder.
How was my trip? And how did I end up there?
We're just curious more than anything else.
I went. Go on vacation, like normal people do, go exploring.
Austin's trial began in the summer of 2015, more than 5 years after the murder and 3 years after her extradition for Belize. The prosecution, led by Deputy District Attorney Jason Quirino, presented evidence over 21 days of testimony. The case against her was comprehensive. DNA evidence placing her at the scene, the forged breakup letter, the ballistics match to her gun, her false statements to police, and her flight to avoid prosecution. The jury deliberated and returned a verdict on August 13, 2015, finding Austin guilty of first-degree murder and finding true the special allegation that she had used a handgun in the commission of the offense. The conviction exposed her to a sentence of up to 50 years to life in state prison. On August 26, 2015, Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge Davian L. Mitchell sentenced Austin to 2 consecutive terms of 25 years to life in state prison. The consecutive structure ensured that Austin would serve a minimum of 50 years before parole eligibility, effectively constituting a life sentence given her age at conviction. The sentencing judge considered the premeditated nature of the murder, the elaborate framing scheme, the vulnerability of the victim who had trusted Austin as a friend, and the calculated abuse of the justice system through the forged letter and false testimony. Austin appealed her conviction, but in November 2017, a California appeals court panel upheld the verdict and sentence. She's currently serving her 50-year to life term in a California state prison, with her earliest possible parole date decades in the future. The case stands as documentation of how Craigslist connections can facilitate predatory relationships, how forensic evidence can unravel even sophisticated framing attempts, and how international fugitive investigations can succeed through media exposure and interagency cooperation. The 5-year gap between offense and sentencing reflected the complexity of extraditing a fugitive from Central America and building an irrefutable case against a defendant who had actively worked to subvert the investigative process. Case 3. Sheila McFarland, Ohio, 2018. The victim and the conspiracy. Robert Williams was an Ohio resident whose 2016 death would expose a murder conspiracy involving multiple participants, including Sheila McFarland as a central coordinator. The case emerged from the darker corners of interpersonal conflict, where resolution through violence replaced legal or social remedies. Williams' specific relationship to the conspirators remains partially obscured, but the evidence established that his death was the intended outcome of deliberate planning rather than spontaneous violence. McFarland was in her mid-30s at the time of the offense, with connections to a network of individuals willing to participate in criminal violence. The conspiracy involved at least one other individual who would serve as the shooter, with McFarland providing coordination, logistical support, and motivation for the killing. The specific trigger for the murder, whether financial, personal, or related to other criminal activity, was established through the co-conspirators' communications and financial records. On the date of the offense in 2016, the conspiracy culminated in Williams' shooting death. The execution was planned to minimize immediate detection, with the shooter carrying out the fatal act while McFarland provided coordination from a separate location. The post-offense conduct involved immediate dispersal of the participants and attempts to establish alibis. Ohio investigators from the local police department and potentially state investigative agencies developed the case through analysis of communications among conspirators, financial transactions showing payments or transfers related to the murder, and witness statements from individuals with knowledge of the planning. The conspiracy theory allowed them to charge McFarland despite her not having personally fired the fatal shots, relying on Ohio's complicity statute that treats conspirators as principals for purposes of criminal liability. The investigation required establishing the existence of an agreement to commit murder, McFarland's knowing participation in that agreement, and an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. Cell phone records, social media communications, and financial documents provided the documentary foundation for these charges, while witness testimony from co-conspirators or associates established the human context of the criminal agreement. McFarland's trial in 2018 presented the conspiracy evidence to a jury in Ohio State Court. The prosecution's case emphasized her knowing participation in the criminal agreement, her actions in furtherance of the conspiracy, including communications, financial transactions, and logistical coordination, and the foreseeable result of the coordinated plan. The jury's verdict reflected acceptance of the theory that McFarland shared criminal intent with the actual shooter and was therefore equally responsible for the outcome under Ohio law. The life without parole sentence imposed on McFarland reflected the severity with which Ohio courts treat conspiracy to commit aggravated murder. Unlike cases where defendants plead guilty and receive sentences with parole possibility, McFarland's sentence provided no mechanism for release, ensuring permanent incapacitation. The sentencing judge considered the calculated nature of conspiracy killings, the inability to identify mitigating circumstances sufficient to warrant mercy, and the need for deterrence and retribution.
People looking into this, Sheila. And after that, the Supreme Court going to be on top of it too.
Okay, Sheila, at this point, I have to tell you that if
you racist anyway.
Would you just please let
No,
me?
because you have always been disrespectful to me, and you don't like black people, and you definitely don't like me.
When you try to flip the script, when you play the race card in a disgusting fashion, but most important, when you manipulate the system of justice by murdering a witness in a criminal trial, you will pay for it with the harshest possible penalty. And therefore, you, madam, will be sentenced to life in prison without any possibility of parole. I'm going to fine you $20,000 in count one and order you to pay your court costs. You'll never be released, so we're not going to talk to you about post-release control.
I already know you ain't gonna release me, and I don't see you no more. I'm glad that I don't have to even see you. I ain't got to see you in the drug case.
Well,
It's over.
You're going to be back in here with that drug case with me too.
Oh, well, you gonna read that up too.
Sheila, you're not done.
Y'all gonna read that up too. Y'all gonna find me guilty.
McFarland's conviction and sentence were upheld on appeal in 2020, with the Ohio Appellate Court finding sufficient evidence to support the conspiracy conviction and appropriate application of sentencing statutes. The appellate review examined whether any rational trier of fact could have found the essential elements of conspiracy beyond reasonable doubt, viewing evidence in the light most favorable to the prosecution. The affirmance established precedent regarding the sufficiency of conspiracy evidence and the appropriateness of life without parole sentences for non-shooting conspirators. The appellate decision provided guidance for subsequent prosecutions and signaled the durability of severe sentences for conspiracy participants. McFarland's case demonstrated that Ohio courts would uphold life without parole sentences for defendants whose involvement in homicide was indirect but intentional, expanding the category of offenders exposed to permanent incarceration. McFarland remains in Ohio State Prison serving her sentence, with no possibility of parole. The case stands as documentation of how conspiracy liability can expose facilitators and coordinators to the same sanctions as actual killers, reflecting legislative and judicial determination that moral culpability for planned killings extends to all intentional participants. Case 4. Iris Williams, Florida, 2025. The domestic context and escalation.
It's about a double shooting that left one man dead and another injured. We've previously reported that Iris Williams, the woman on your screen, was arrested in connection with the deaths. A newly released incident report reveals a woman called police saying she was taken hostage and that 2 people were shot. According to the report, one of the victims was found inside the home on Abelia Street by police, sitting in a chair with a gunshot wound to his head. He was taken to the hospital. Another man was found face down with multiple gunshot wounds. He was pronounced dead. The woman who called police was uninjured.
In 2023, Iris Williams was involved in a domestic relationship in Jacksonville, Florida, that had deteriorated to the point of lethal violence. Her boyfriend, the primary target of her rage, had a brother who would become collateral damage in the unfolding tragedy. The case demonstrates how domestic conflict can expand to encompass family members who attempt to intervene or are simply present during violent episodes. Williams was in her late 20s or early 30s, with a history of relationship conflict that had not previously resulted in criminal charges. The specific trigger for the 2023 incident, whether discovery of infidelity, financial dispute, or accumulated grievances, was established through witness testimony and Williams' own statements to investigators. What is clear is that the conflict escalated beyond verbal confrontation to physical violence involving a firearm. The presence of the brother complicated the scenario. He may have attempted to intervene in the conflict between Williams and his brother, or he may have been present simply as a visitor or resident of the shared location. His death transformed a potential single homicide into a double murder, aggravating Williams' legal exposure and ensuring severe sentencing outcomes. On the date of the offense in 2023, Williams shot and killed both her boyfriend and his brother in Jacksonville. The killings occurred in a residential setting, with forensic evidence establishing the sequence of shots and the relative positioning of the victims. The firearm used was recovered, with ballistics evidence linking it to both deaths. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit responded to the scene, securing physical evidence and witness statements. The investigation quickly established Williams as the sole perpetrator, with no evidence of additional participants or self-defense justifications. In May 2025, Williams was sentenced to life imprisonment for the double homicide.
41-year-old Charles Watkins was murdered. shot in the head as he sat in the chair in the family room of his mother's house where he lived. That same night, 47-year-old Thomas Harris, the second son of Pearline Watkins, along with Charles Watkins, was murdered as he lay in his bed in his mother's house on his stomach. After 78-year-old Pearline Watkins' sons were both murdered, she was kidnapped at gunpoint by that defendant, Iris Williams.
Case 5, Sakina Thompson, Florida, 2025. The romantic rivalry and digital documentation. In 2022, Sakina Thompson became involved in a fatal conflict with Kayla Hodgson in Florida, the culmination of romantic rivalry that escalated beyond verbal confrontation to lethal violence. The case demonstrated how digital technology has transformed the documentation and prosecution of crimes of passion, with social media providing contemporaneous records of motive, premeditation, and hostile intent. Thompson was in her late 20s, involved in a romantic relationship that had become complicated by competition with Hodgson. The specific dynamics, whether Thompson's partner was involved with Hodgson or whether Hodgson represented a perceived threat to an existing relationship, fueled Thompson's rage. The jealous rage characterization captured both the emotional intensity of the conflict and the potential mitigation arguments regarding diminished capacity. However, Thompson's conduct before, during, and after the killing demonstrated sufficient planning and intent to support first-degree murder charges.
State prosecutors questioned Sakina Thompson about why she stabbed Kayla Hodgson to death inside of Hodgson's Tamarack home 3 years ago. Thompson told jurors she went to Hodgson's apartment uninvited to talk woman to woman about dating the same man. Thompson claims Hodgson attacked her.
Punching me.
Punching you where?
My face.
Where on your face? Point to it for us.
I don't remember, but everywhere on
my face.
You don't
remember where she was punching you in your face?
In my face.
I mean, this is why you killed her, right?
No.
Right?
No.
It's not?
No.
You didn't kill her because she was fighting you?
No, I killed her because she took the glass from the hookah and slashed me across my stomach.
Thompson says she was 2 months pregnant at the time. She says Hodgson cut her stomach with a piece of glass. Thompson grabbed the glass and then blacked out. She allegedly awoke to Hodgson dead on the floor. Gruesome autopsy photos of Hodgson's body show she was stabbed dozens of times.
I wasn't really walking over the blood, I was walking in the blood.
You walked in the blood?
Yes.
With what shoes?
The BB shoes. I changed my shoes.
Thompson admitted to changing into the victim's clothes, cleaning up some of the crime scene, and being too scared to call police. She also threw evidence in the trash.
No, she's getting close enough because my jacket was cut up.
Okay, your jacket was cut up?
My jacket was cut up.
Okay, and what'd you do with that jacket?
Threw it away.
In the months leading up to the killing, Thompson admitted to getting upset when Hodgson blocked her on social media. The state says she was upset enough to kill.
You wrote her on IG and she, in fact, ignored your message initially, correct?
Correct.
And that made you angry?
Correct.
Thompson's trial in late 2025 presented the digital and physical evidence to a jury, which convicted her of first-degree murder. The prosecution emphasized the premeditation established by digital communications and the deliberate nature of the killing despite the emotional context. The jury's acceptance of premeditation charges despite the jealous rage context demonstrated the limited success of passion-based offenses when digital evidence establishes planning or sustained hostile intent. The life sentence imposed reflected judicial assessment that romantic rivalry, however emotionally compelling, could not mitigate the intentional killing of a romantic competitor. The case concluded with Thompson entering Florida's prison system, her digital footprint preserved in case records as evidence of the motive and intent that supported her conviction. The prosecution demonstrated the power of social media evidence to overcome traditional defenses in domestic conflict homicides. In August 2022, Crystal Pinkins and Yasmin Hyder were living in a makeshift campsite in Alabama's Talladega National Forest, approximately 1/2 mile from the main road near Cheaha State Park. Pinkins, then 37 years old, was a mother to a 5-year-old son and had been residing in the forest with Hyder, who was 20 years old at the time of the offense. The two women had been living off the grid for weeks, camping in tents and struggling to meet basic needs. The living conditions were desperate. Hyder had been unemployed and struggling to pay rent, which led her to contact Pinkins about camping together in the National Forest. The women had not eaten in 2 days when they devised a plan to obtain transportation and resources through predatory deception. Their scheme involved staging a vehicle breakdown to attract Good Samaritans who could be robbed. Pinkins owned a pistol and had taught Hyder to use it weeks earlier. She also possessed a shotgun. On August 12, 2022, Pinkins gave Hyder the pistol, knowing that Hyder intended to use it to carjack someone if necessary. Pinkins later claimed she gave Hyder the gun for protection while seeking a ride to the store, but acknowledged that Hyder had told her she might use it to take a car by force if needed. Pinkins told police she could not be involved in a carjacking because she had a child to consider, yet she provided the weapon and participated in the planning. On August 14, 2022, Hyder executed the plan while Pinkins watched from concealment. Hyder positioned herself on the main road and flagged down Adam Simji, a 22-year-old college student from Apopka, Florida, and his girlfriend Michaela Paulus, 20. Simji and Paulus were en route to Cheaha State Park to hike to waterfalls when they encountered Hyder, who claimed her car needed a jump start. The couple followed Hyder to the location where a Scion vehicle was parked. They spent approximately an hour attempting to start the car, calling Paulus's father for advice and watching YouTube tutorials. Hyder had ensured the car would not start. She knew jumping the battery would not work because the vehicle had a blown fuse, so the Good Samaritan's efforts were doomed from the outset. When Simji and Paulus concluded they could not fix the car, Hyder pulled the pistol that Pinkins had provided. She ordered them to walk into the woods and empty their pockets. Paulus placed her phone and van keys on the ground. Hyder obtained Paulus's phone password and used the device to record audio while demanding credit card PIN numbers and banking passwords for both victims. During the robbery, Hyder became distracted. Simji, who had a concealed handgun, seized the opportunity to defend himself and Paulus. He drew his weapon and fired at Hyder. An exchange of gunfire ensued. Hyder shot Simji once, mortally wounding him, while Simji fired back, striking Hyder 4 times. Hyder fell with a broken leg and called out to Pinkins, who was watching from the nearby woods. Pinkins emerged from the woods to find Hyder injured and Simji dying. Paulus was performing CPR on her boyfriend as directed by a 911 operator. Pinkins' response was to ask Hyder, "What do you want me to do? I don't have anything on me," before fleeing back into the forest. When law enforcement arrived, they found Paulus attempting to revive Simji and Hyder lying on the ground nearby. Medical personnel could not save Simji. He died at the scene from the gunshot wound inflicted by Hyder. Hyder was airlifted to a Birmingham hospital for surgery on her injuries. A tracking team led law enforcement to the campsite approximately 1/2 mile from the robbery scene. As officers approached, they observed Pinkins standing near the tents. When ordered to the ground, Pinkins complied, but her 5-year-old son ran from the woods holding a loaded shotgun. Officers commanded the child to put down the weapon, but he continued to his mother's location before laying the shotgun on the ground. The Department of Human Resources took custody of the child, and Pinkins was arrested. Hyder was apprehended at the scene and made incriminating statements in the days following the shooting. She asked agents, "Did he die?" and stated, "I didn't want to hurt anybody." She also said, "I took his whole life away. Now he can't tell his story," and was recorded during the incident saying, "Why did you shoot? It wasn't supposed to be like this." Hyder accepted a plea agreement to testify against Pinkins. On October 4th, 2023, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, kidnapping, and robbery. In exchange for her testimony, she received a sentence of 35 years in prison on January 4th, 2024. Pinkins proceeded to trial in September 2023. The prosecution presented evidence that she had provided the murder weapon, taught Hyder to use it, assisted in planning the robbery, and positioned herself in the woods to observe while maintaining plausible deniability. The jury found Pinkins guilty of felony murder, robbery, and use of a firearm during a crime of violence causing death. On January 4, 2024, Pinkins was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence reflected her role as the supplier of the murder weapon, the planner of the robbery scheme, and the supervisor of its execution. Despite not pulling the trigger herself, Pinkins was held fully culpable under federal aiding and abetting statutes that treat accomplices as principals. The divergent sentences, 35 years for Hyder, who shot Simji, life without parole for Pinkins, who supplied the gun, reflected the respective plea agreement and trial outcomes. Pinkins' appeal, filed in 2024 and decided in February 2026, affirmed her convictions and sentence, establishing that participants in felony murder who provide weapons and plan robberies are subject to the same severe sanctions as the actual shooters.
Brenda, Michaela Paulus is back in Florida tonight with her family. Her boyfriend, Adam Simji, and her were set to begin a new chapter in college together next week. Now, as for the woman who she says killed her boyfriend, Michaela says she said everything she needed to in those woods. Michaela Paulus and Adam Simji's road trip was meant to celebrate the beginning of their new journey together at the University of Central Florida. It ended in bloodshed. Sunday started with a trip to Mount Cheaha, where they found Yasmin Hyder seemingly stranded on the side of the road. Fate then seemed to intervene.
He had just bought this huge battery pack and made sure that we charged it the night before.
Michaela is also the daughter of a mechanic.
I even called my dad and we watched YouTube videos and stuff to try and fix her car, but she, at the end, when nothing could be done, she pulled out a gun and told us to walk into the woods.
Hyder told them to drop their phones. She asked for banking passwords, but Michaela knew something she didn't.
Adam had his gun on him the whole time because he said this is how people get robbed, so I was just waiting for him to use it.
She described what happened next.
Her guard dropped after she had asked for all the banking passwords and stuff, and Adam pulled out his gun and told her to get on the ground. And that's when she started messing around with her gun. It jammed once, but they both shot at each other, and she was shot a few times, and he was shot only once.
Michaela found her phone and called 911. Adam was bleeding, so she used her shirt to desperately try to stop it. He never woke up.
He literally was like an angel on earth already. Everyone that met him loved him. He was always making jokes and being goofy.
It took nearly 30 minutes for paramedics to arrive. Michaela says she found herself alone in the woods with the woman who killed her boyfriend of 4 years, the man she loved, the man she lived with. So what did she tell her?
We would have given you food and money. I already told her, like, she didn't have to shoot. I think I've said everything I need to say to her until we go to court.
Case 7. Shaniqua Brown, Alabama, 2019/2025, at the social media dispute and escalation. In July 2019, Shaniqua Patrice Brown became involved in a fatal conflict with Jasmine Moore in Huntsville, Alabama, demonstrating how digital-age disputes can escalate from online confrontation to lethal violence. The case originated in the virtual space of social media before manifesting in physical death, illustrating the porous boundary between digital hostility and real-world harm. Brown was 25 years old at the time of the offense, with a background that included prior criminal justice involvement. She was on probation when the murder occurred, having accumulated legal issues that suggested difficulty with impulse control and conflict resolution. Moore was 20 years old, described by family members as a beloved figure who served as a big sister or big cousin to many in her community, opening her doors to anyone in need.
Facebook posts got out of hand and led to a fatal confrontation. She hopes this tragic tale shows people how one little thing can escalate to something larger and possibly deadly. Miyaka Douglas says her daughter, Jasmine Moore, was always there to comfort her. But now the beautiful 21-year-old is gone.
Jasmine was a beautiful soul. She loved her family.
Jasmine was fatally shot last Friday at her apartment complex, the Garden Place Apartments on Hood Road in southwest Huntsville. Her roommate's sister, Shaniqua Brown, is charged in the case. Douglas says it all started with a Facebook post from her daughter's roommate.
The post was, pretty much telling their business and was disrespecting me and my daughter and stuff like that.
As things escalated, Jasmine and Shaniqua Brown ended up coming face to face at the complex.
She went over there to fight my daughter, and my daughter fought her, and they said she beat her up pretty bad. Then she left, and she came back and shot my daughter in her house.
Douglas says her daughter had been bullied by the suspect before.
I never thought it would go this far. That day, on the 26th, was, I guess, the last straw.
She hopes the case cautions others not to take social media drama to an extreme.
Don't ever post your business on Facebook. Be careful who you talk to and trust. And if somebody get on there and want to argue and do the extra stuff, ignore it. It got out of hand, and I never expected for me to be having to bury my child.
The investigation into Moore's death was immediately complicated by an extraordinary conflict of interest. The lead investigator assigned to the case, Huntsville Police Investigator Julian Johnson, allegedly had an ongoing sexual relationship with Brown that predated the murder and continued after he began investigating her for homicide. This relationship, which Johnson did not disclose to his superiors or to prosecutors, created a fundamental compromise of the investigative process. The existence of the relationship came to light before trial, prompting Brown's defense attorney, Chad Morgan, to file a motion to suppress all evidence collected by Johnson. The judge denied this motion, allowing Johnson's evidence to be presented to the jury, though the relationship itself was not disclosed to jurors during the trial. Johnson has since retired from the Huntsville Police Department. For 6 years, Brown had maintained her innocence, claiming she did not shoot Moore. On the second day of trial, she took the stand and changed her story entirely, claiming for the first time that she had acted in self-defense. This 11th-hour adoption of self-defense was strategically problematic. As Madison County Chief Trial Attorney Tim Douthit noted in closing arguments, this is not a hard case. The sudden claim of fear for her life, after years of denying involvement, lacked credibility. The jury deliberated for just over an hour before returning a guilty verdict, indicating overwhelming evidence of guilt or straightforward application of legal standards to the facts presented. On July 10, 2025, Brown was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, a sentence that reflected Alabama's sentencing framework for murder convictions. The sentencing hearing was emotionally charged, with tears flowing from both sides of the courtroom as Brown read a letter to Moore's family. In her statement, Brown apologized repeatedly, claiming she did not mean to kill Moore and that she had acted in a moment of fear. Case 8. Jamila Elena Mickle, California, 2023/2024. In November 2023, Jamila Elena Mickle, a 36-year-old woman experiencing homelessness, committed a murder that demonstrated the lethal potential of stalking behavior when left unchecked by protective orders. The case originated in a fixation on film director A.V. Rockwell that escalated from admiration to violent obsession, ultimately claiming the life of an unrelated third party who had simply been friends with the object of Mickle's fixation. Mickle had worked as an extra on Rockwell's directorial debut, 2001, an award-winning independent film that screened at the Sundance Film Festival in January 2023. Her initial interactions with Rockwell appear benign. She gave the director a gift after production concluded and expressed admiration for her work. However, the character of these interactions shifted dramatically over subsequent months. By mid-2023, Mickle's outreach had become threatening. She began sending emails in which she threatened to kill herself if Rockwell did not respond, transforming admiration into emotional blackmail. This escalation prompted Rockwell to file a restraining order against Mickle in June 2023, a legal intervention that proved insufficient to stop the stalking behavior. The restraining order, while creating a paper trail of Mickle's fixation, could not physically prevent her from continuing to monitor Rockwell's associations and activities. Michael Ladd, a 33-year-old entertainment consultant and social justice advocate, became Mickle's target not through any direct interaction with her, but through his friendship with Rockwell. Ladd had posted a photograph of himself, his mother Michelle Satter, and Rockwell online shortly after 2001 won the grand jury prize at Sundance, publicly celebrating his friend's success. This visible association proved fatal. Michael Ladd was the founder and CEO of Lead with Love, a consulting firm focused on social impact in film and entertainment. He had built a career elevating artists of color and social justice causes, working with prominent figures including Selma director Ava DuVernay, Black Panther director Ryan Coogler, Moonlight director Barry Jenkins, and rapper Common. His firm provided communications and marketing strategy for Netflix, Warner Brothers Pictures, Array, and Annapurna Pictures, among others. Ladd came from a family with deep roots in the entertainment industry. His mother, Michelle Satter, was a founding director of the Sundance Institute who was scheduled to receive the Academy's Jean Hers Holt Humanitarian Award in January 2024, an honorary Oscar recognizing her decades of work on behalf of independent filmmakers. His brother, Franklin Ladd, served as head of talent at Creative Artists Agency, representing major Hollywood stars. On November 27, 2023, Ladd was at home in the Mid-Wilshire area of Los Angeles with his fiancée, Hannah Lovingood. The couple resided on the 900 block of Allendale Avenue in an apartment building that Mickle had identified as her target. At approximately 6:07 p.m., Mickle knocked on the door of Ladd's apartment. She was armed with a semi-automatic handgun and prepared to force her way inside. When Lovingood opened the door, Mickle claimed she was a friend of Ladd's and wanted to give him a book. This pretext lasted only moments before Mickle burst past Lovingood into the apartment. Inside, Mickle found Ladd in the living room. She pointed her weapon at him and fired multiple shots. One bullet struck him in the head, another in the chest. The wounds were immediately fatal, though paramedics would transport him to a local hospital where he was formally pronounced dead. The shooting occurred with such speed and proximity that intervention was impossible. Lovingood ran for help as the shots were fired. A neighbor called 911 while Mickle remained in the apartment. When Los Angeles Police Department officers arrived, they found Mickle still present and arrested her without incident. Paramedics attempted to save Ladd, but the wounds were too severe. The investigation quickly established the connection between Mickle and Rockwell and the motive for targeting Ladd. Mickle had been living in her car for 9 months at the time of the murder, a detail that would later be cited in mitigation, but that also demonstrated the instability and desperation that can accompany stalking behavior. Mickle was charged with first-degree murder and first-degree burglary, with the burglary charge reflecting her unlawful entry into Ladd's home. She was held on $3 million bail from the time of her arrest through the resolution of her case. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, led by George Gaskin, handled the prosecution. The case against Mickle was overwhelming from the outset. She had been arrested at the scene, the murder weapon was recovered, and the motive was established through the documented history of stalking Rockwell. The physical evidence and witness testimony from Lovingood provided a clear factual basis for the charges. On June 24, 2024, Mickle entered a guilty plea in open court to 1 count of first-degree murder and 1 count of first-degree residential burglary. She also admitted the use of a firearm, an enhancement that increased her sentencing exposure. The plea was entered 8 months after the murder, reflecting the time required for investigation, charging, and plea negotiations. During the plea proceeding, Mickle's public defender, Kimberly Wong, read a statement on her client's behalf. Ms. Mickle changed her plea to guilty in order to take responsibility for her actions and to do the right thing for all involved, Wong stated. The statement acknowledged that Mickle had been homeless on the streets of Los Angeles for 9 months and struggling with multiple traumatic events at the time of the shooting. It concluded that Mikkel was deeply saddened by the tremendous amount of pain she has caused to so many in hopes that her change and plea will help everyone to be able to heal and move forward. On July 10, 2024, Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge Carrie White imposed sentence. The court had the option of sentencing Mikkel to 25 years to life or 35 years to life under the terms of her plea agreement. Judge White selected the maximum available term, 35 years to life in state prison. The 35-year minimum before parole eligibility means that Mikkel, then 36 years old, will be at least 71 before she can request release. The practical effect is a life sentence, as parole boards typically deny release at initial eligibility for offenders convicted of first-degree murder, particularly those who committed their crimes in such calculated and violent circumstances.